Hello and welcome back to the shooting gallery tutorial for Ren'Py part 5, and let's just jump straight back into it, shall we? I just want to say a quick thank you to the new Patreon supporter on my Patreon page. Thank you so much for joining and supporting my channel. So in the last video we created some code to be able to shoot a cork bullet from the cork gun, and we also made it possible to hit a target with the bullet. In this video we're going to do a few things. Two of these things is, first of all, to implement a text to the screen that is going to show the current score of the player, and then we're also going to implement a countdown timer that is going to count down from a certain amount of seconds down to 0, and then once we have hit 0 we're going to show a game over screen. Now there's also an issue with the script that you may come across, and most probably are going to come across if you're going to allow any type of resizing of your game. And I want to first of all demonstrate what this issue is inside of the game, and then I'm going to show you how you can fix it. So we already know that the cork gun's movement inside of the game works really nicely, as when we're moving the mouse from side to side, the cork gun will follow. And we also know that if we try to move too far to the right or too far to the left, the cork gun will stop before it clips beyond the bounds of the window. But what is to happen now if we try to resize the game window to be any other size than the original project resolution? As we can tell, there's something not quite right here, because as we try to move the mouse beyond this point right here, the cork gun seems to be stopping before it can reach the actual mouse position, almost as if there's an invisible wall that is stopping it from moving. And if we try to resize it to be even smaller, we can tell that now it stops even earlier right here. So this is obviously a bit of an issue. So let's go ahead and go back into the code, and I'm going to explain exactly what's happening. So I've gone ahead and scrolled back up into the init Python block, and the function we're going to have a look at is this cork gun transform function specifically, that is controlling the movement of the cork gun. So what is the issue with the code inside of this function that is causing the cork gun to not behave correctly when we have resized the game window? Well, that would be with this if statement right here. And the specific issue we're having with this if statement is with this function call right here, where we are trying to get the actual size of the game window. And the reason why this is not going to work correctly for a game is mainly a misunderstanding on my part as to how the coordinate system works in Ren'Py, specifically in regards to this function right here, where we are getting the mouse position. So the way that I thought that this function would work is that it would give us the coordinates of the mouse in relation to the actual game window. But the way that it actually works is that it will give you the coordinates based on the project size instead. So if you imagine that you have a project in the size 1280 pixels wide, and the game window is in the same size, and you place your mouse cursor at the very right edge of the window, then that coordinate on the x-axis is going to give you 1280 pixels, because that's the width of the project. But then if you are to scale the width down of the window to, let's say, 1060 instead, and you place the mouse cursor at the very right edge of the window, again, you're not going to get 1060 in this case, but you're rather going to get the same value as before, which is 1280 pixels. And that is because Ren'Py considers the project size to be the same size no matter how big or small you're scaling the window. So in order to make this if statement work correctly, we're going to have to make sure that this condition right here is relying on the actual project size rather than the window size. And we're going to do that by referring to a configuration variable called screen width and screen height. So for this right here, we're going to switch this to say config.screen width, like so. So now this if statement is going to work correctly. And we're going to do the same thing when we are calculating the Y position, so right here. So we're going to switch this Ren'Py get physical size to instead say config.screen height, like so. The next area inside of our script where we are going to have to do a correction is inside of our cork events function. So we're going to scroll back down until we find it. Right down here. So in here, we're also relying on the get physical size function, but we also want to switch this to the configuration variable instead. So we're going to remove this whole section, like so. And then we're going to say config dot screen height, like so. So now we're making sure that a cork bullet cannot be spawned if the mouse cursor is too far down on the screen as the user is clicking with it, according to the screen height configuration variable minus 140 pixels. So now we only have one more area inside of our script where we have to make a correction, and that is inside of our start label. So we're going to scroll back down, and in here we're going to want to correct the value for this cork gun opals variable. So instead of this tuple right here, we're going to want to switch all of the get physical size function calls to instead use the configuration variables. So we're going to switch this first part right here to say config dot screen width, and then the height for this part right here. So we're going to remove that and say config dot screen height. So now we can go ahead and save our changes and launch the game to see how this is going to work like. So now let's go ahead and resize the window again to a smaller size to see if this is going to work any better. And as we can tell, that does seem to work indeed, as the cork gun is now moving with the mouse all the way to either side of the window. And let's make it even smaller. And we can see that this still works. And let's go ahead and make it full screen by clicking on this button on the window. And we can see that this also works. So now let's go back into the code again and see what else we can do. So now that we have corrected that, we are going to continue by adding the score text to the screen as well as the countdown timer. And we're going to do that inside of this shooting gallery screen. So we can go ahead and add a new line underneath this image right here. And then we're going to say text, and then we'll create a new string, and then we'll say score, and then 2 square brackets, and instead of those we're going to say score, like so. And then we're going to add a color to this text, so we're going to say color, and this is going to be a white color, so we're going to add a hashtag and then 6 F characters, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're also going to add a black outline to this text that is going to expand from the text 1 pixel, and it also is going to be offset to the right and to the bottom by 1 pixel. And we're doing this because it's going to make the text stand out a little bit more. So for that we're going to say outlines and then 2 square brackets, like so. And then instead of those we're going to add 2 round brackets, like so. And that is because the outlines property takes a list containing tuple values. So the first value inside of this tuple determines how far the outline should expand from the text. So for that we're going to say absolute, and then we're going to add a 1 instead of that. And then we're going to add a comma, and then we're going to add the color of the outline, and this is going to be, first of all, a hash symbol. And then we're going to add a black color with 50% opacity. So for that we are first of all going to add 6 zeros, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then we're going to say 50, like so. So this is going to make sure that there's a black color with 50% opacity. And then we'll add a comma after that. And now we're going to add the offset on the x-axis. So we're going to say absolute, and then 1 instead of that, and then a comma again, and then absolute, and then 1 instead of that. So these 2 last absolute values are going to make sure that the outline is offset on the x and on the y axis by 1 pixel. And then we're going to add a size for this text. So we're going to say size, and let's go with 25. And then we're going to position it, so we're going to say pause, and then 2 round brackets, like so. And then we're going to say 55, and 40, like so. So it's going to be positioned at the x coordinate of 55 and y coordinate of 40. And then we are going to position the origin point or the anchor point at the top left corner. So we're going to say anchor and then 2 round brackets and then 0.0 and 0.0, like so. So now let's go ahead and save our changes and have a quick look inside of a game to see what this looks like. So here inside of the game again, we can now see that we have the score text up here in the left corner. And we can see that it's a white text together with a drop shadow or a outline that is black with a 50% opacity. And let's go ahead and see what's going to happen if we try to hit some of the targets. As we can see, the score seems to be going up as we're hitting the targets. So we know that that is working correctly. So now let's go back into the code and continue with the rest of the code. Now to create the actual countdown timer for our game, we are going to need to create some new variables. So we're going to go back down into our start label, and in this other variables section, we're going to create these new variables. So the first variable is going to control the amount of time that the game should go for. So for that, we're going to say initial countdown time, and this we're going to set to 20.0, so 20 seconds. The next one is going to hold the current value of the countdown timer. So for that, we're going to say countdown time. And this variable is going to refer to the initial countdown time variable when the game starts, as we want it to count down from 20 seconds. So we're going to say initial countdown time, like so. And then we're going to go back up into the shooting gallery screen. And then we'll create a few empty lines underneath this text. And then we're going to say timer 1.0. So we want this timer to run after a 1 second delay. And then we're going to say action. And the action that we're going to run is going to be determined based on a few conditions. And that is going to look like this. If, and then 2 round brackets. So we're using the if function in Ren'Py to be able to determine the action that we want to run. And then the condition we're going to check for is going to be countdown is more than 0. And then if that is true, we're going to say true is equal to. And now we're going to subtract 1 second from the countdown variable. So for that, we're going to use the set variable action. So we're going to say set variable. And the variable we want to set is going to be countdown, like so. And then the value that we want to set it to is going to be countdown minus 1.0, like so. So now we are subtracting 1 second from the countdown variable. And this is only going to happen if the countdown value is more than 0. And then we're going to add an action that is going to run if this condition is false instead. So we're going to add a comma after this, like so. And then we're going to say false is equal to. And in this case, we're going to show a screen that we haven't yet created, which is going to show a screen that tells the user that the time is up. So for that, we're going to say show. And then we're going to call this screen time is up, like so. So as long as the countdown variable is more than 0, then we're going to make sure that we are subtracting 1.0 from the countdown variable. But if it's false, then we instead are going to show the time is up screen. And now we also want to make sure that this timer is going to continuously run until the countdown variable has hit the value of 0. And to do that, we're going to say repeat. And then we're going to use the if function again. So we're going to say if. And the condition we're going to check for is countdown is more than 0. So if that is true, then we're going to say true is equal to, and then with a capital first letter, we're going to say true again, like so. But then if this condition is false, we're going to say false is equal to, and then with a capital letter, we're going to say false, like so. So we're going to repeat this timer as long as the countdown variable has a value that is more than 0, So if this condition is true, then we're saying that the repeat condition should be true, but if it's false, then it should be false. So now let's go ahead and also create this time is up screen. So we're going to create a few empty lines underneath this screen, and then go inwards once in the indentations, like so. And then we're going to say screen time is up. And this screen we're going to make into a modal. So we're going to say modal true. And then we're going to create a frame. So we're going to say frame. And the properties for this frame is going to be xfill true. So we're going to make sure that the frame is taking up all the space on the x-axis. And then we're going to say y align 0.5, which means that this frame is going to be aligned on the y-axis in the middle of the screen. And then we're going to say background, and this is going to be a white color. So we're going to add a hash symbol and then 6 F characters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're also going to lower the opacity a little bit. So we're going to add a value of 80, which is going to make sure, if I remember correctly, that the color is going to be more or less 50% opacity. So the value up here that I said before is 50% opacity is actually not quite correct, as the value doesn't quite work like that. So if we put 80, that is more or less going to give us 50% instead. And I have left a link into the description box below to a GitHub page by the user lopspower that is showing you all the different alpha values that you can use together with your hexadecimal colors. And I highly recommend that you bookmark that page and refer to those values whenever you need to know a specific alpha value. So now we're going to add another property, which is going to be padding. So we're going to say padding, and this is going to be 15 pixels all around. So we're going to say 15 and 15. And then we're going to add a text that is going to let the user know that the time is up. So for that, we're going to say text, and then time is up. And the color for this text is going to be black. So we're going to say color, and then hash symbol and 6 zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we're going to align the text. So we're going to say align. And we're going to align it at the middle of this frame. So we're going to say 0.5 and 0.5. And then we'll give the text a size. So we're going to say size, and this can be 40, like so. And now we want to make sure that this screen is only going to be up for a certain amount of seconds. So for that, we're going to add a timer underneath this frame. So we're going to say timer, and we're going to have this screen up for about 3 seconds. So we're going to say 3.0. And then for the action, we're going to say action. And this is going to be 2 things that we want to do. The first thing is to hide this screen, and the second action is to show the final score screen, which is going to let the user know what their final score is. So for that, we're going to add a list first, like so that we can add several actions. And then we're going to say hide. So we're going to hide this time is up screen. So we're going to say time is up. And then we're going to say show. And the screen that we're going to show, we are going to call final score, like so. And now we can go ahead and create this final score screen. So we're going to add a few empty lines underneath here. And then we're going to say screen final score. And we're going to order the screen. So we're going to say set order. And this is going to be 2. And then we're going to set this screen to be a modal. So we're going to say modal true. And now we're going to create 2 frames. One of these frames are going to act as an overlay color on top of the actual game. And the second frame is going to contain all of the content shown to the player. So for that, we're going to say frame. And the properties is going to be background. And the background is going to be a transparent black color. So for that, we're going to say hash symbol and then 6 zeros. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. and then a 75% opacity, which is going to be BF, like so. And the next property is going to be Xfill, and this we're going to set to true, as well as Yfill, like so, which means that this frame is going to take up the entire screen. And then we're going to say padding, and this is going to be 0 and 0, like so. And then we're going to add the other frame inside of this frame. So we're going to say frame, and the properties are going to be align, and we want this frame to be aligned in the center of the screen. So we're going to say 0.5 and 0.5. And then we're going to give this frame a size. So we're going to say XY size. And this is going to be 1485. And then we're going to divide this by 2 because we're going to add an image to this frame. And this image is twice as large as what we actually want it to be displayed on the screen. And then we're going to say 912 for the height divided by 2, like so. And now we're going to remove the standard background image for this frame. And to do that, we are simply going to set the background property to none. And then to add our own background, we're going to add an image displayable instead. So for that, we're going to say background none, like so. And then we're going to say padding. And this is going to be 0 as well. So we're going to say 0 and 0. And now we are going to add the background image for this frame. So we're going to say image. And the path to this image is going to be images, final, score, background, .png. And then we're going to resize this to be half of its original size. So we're going to say at half size. And then let's also show the user their score. So we're going to say text, and then your score, and then 2 square brackets, and then score inside of that. And then we'll also add an outline to this text. And for that, we can do the same as we have done before. So we can simply look up here into the shooting gallery screen and copy paste this outline that we have put here. So I'm going to copy that and then paste that down here, like so. And then we're going to give this text a color. So we're going to say color, and this is going to be hash symbol, and then 2 Fs, so 1, 2, and then BF, and then 5F, like so. And I believe this is going to give us a yellow color of text. And then we're going to say size, and this is going to be 40, and then align, and we're going to align this text in the center of the frame. So we're going to say 0.5 and 0.5. And then we're going to add some buttons to this frame that is going to allow the user to play the game again or to quit. So for that, we're going to say image button, and then auto, because we want this image button to automatically pick the correct idle and hover versions. And then we're going to say images, play again, button, and then dash %s.png. And then we're going to align this button. So we're going to say align, and then 0.20 on the x-axis and 0.7 on the y-axis. And then we're going to change the anchor point. So we're going to say anchor, and this is going to be at the very top left corner. So we're going to say 0.0 and 0.0. And now we're going to create some actions for this image button. And these actions are going to help us to reset the minigame back to its starting point. And as such, one of these actions are going to call a Python function that is going to reset some of the variables back to their initial values. So to do that, let's go ahead and create this function first. So we're going to scroll back up into the init Python block right here. So right after this cork update function, we can create this new function. So we're going to scroll back down, and we're going to create a few empty lines underneath this return statement, and then go inwards once in the indentations, like so. And then we're going to say def And we're going to call this function prepare shooting gallery, like so. And the first two variables that we're going to reset is going to be the countdown variable as well as the score variable. And to do that, we need to first of all make these into globals. So we're going to say global countdown and global score. And now to reset the countdown variable, we're going to refer to the initial countdown time variable. So we're going to say countdown is equal to initial countdown time. And then for the score, we are going to reset it back to 0. So we're going to say score is equal to 0, like so. And then we also want to make sure that we are resetting the targets back to their initial positions. So for that, we are going to make sure that we are looping through all of the targets in the target sprites list. So we're going to say for target in target sprites. And then inside of here, we're going to reset the attributes for the targets. So the first one is going to be the hit attribute. So we're going to say target.hit is equal to false. And then we're going to reset the idle animation. So we're going to say target.idle animation direction. And this is going to be equal to the up animation. So we're going to write up like so. And then we're going to reset the animation time attribute. So we're going to say target.animation time is equal to 0.0. And then we're going to do the current frame attribute. So target.current frame. And this is going to be the 5th frame since we want to animate the targets going up from the last frame to the first one. And then we want to make sure that we are swapping the image for the target back to the last frame or the last image for the animation. So we're going to say I is equal to image. And then the path is going to be images target 14.png, like so. And then we're going to make sure that we are creating new transforms that is going to make sure that they have the correct zoom properties. So we're going to say if target.row is equal to 1. So if this is a target on the first row, then we're going to say t is equal to transform and child is equal to I and zoom is equal to target row 1 zoom. And then we'll do the other ones. So we're going to say elif target.row is equal to 2, and then t is equal to transform and child is equal to I and zoom is equal to target row 2 zoom. And then the last one, so elif target.row is equal to 3, and then t is equal to transform child is equal to I and zoom is equal to target row 3 zoom, like so. And then we also need to make sure that we are updating the target's child. So we're going to create a new line, and then we're going to say target.set child, and then we're going to pass in the transform as the parameter, like so. So now we have finished this function. So we're going to scroll back down into the final score screen right here, and we're going to give our image button some actions. So we're going to say action, and then we're going to create a list so that we can add several actions to this image button. So the first action is going to hide this final score screen. So we're going to say hide and then final score, and then we're going to hide the shooting gallery screen so that we can restart it up again. So we're going to say hide shooting gallery, and then we're going to call our new function that we just created, So we're going to say function, and then prepare shooting gallery, and then we're going to show the shooting gallery screen again. So we're going to say show shooting gallery, like so. And then the last thing for this image button is to make sure that it has the correct size. So we're going to say at half size. And then we'll do the last thing for this screen, which is going to be another image button to allow the user to quit the game. So we're going to say image button, auto, and then images, quit button, and then dash %s.png. And then we're going to align this. So we're going to say align, and this is going to be 0.55 and 0.7. And then we'll change the anchor point. So we're going to say anchor 0.0 and 0.0. And then we're going to give this image button some actions as well. So we're going to say action. And so these actions are going to make sure that we are going back to the first scene of our game. So we're going to add 2 square brackets again to make a list. And the first action is going to be to hide the final score screen. So we're going to say hide final score. And then we're going to hide the shooting gallery screen. So we're going to say hide shooting gallery. And then we're going to show the first scene. So we're going to say show scene 1. And then we'll make sure that this image button has the right size as well. So we're going to say at half size, like so. Now you can of course return the user to whatever screen that you want in your game. So when the user has quit the minigame, instead of returning the user to scene 1, you can of course write whatever screen that you like. Now we also need to correct an error that I have made, as I had completely forgotten what the countdown variable is called. So up here in the timer in our shooting gallery screen, instead of saying if countdown is more than 0, we of course are going to need to say if countdown time is more than 0. And then we're going to have to change this as well. So we're going to say countdown time, and the same here, countdown time, and the same here, like so. And then instead of our prepare shooting gallery function, we're also going to need to update this. So this global countdown up here should say countdown time, and the same here, countdown time, like so. And the last thing we need to do is to make sure that we are adding the countdown timer to the screen as well, so that we don't forget that. So that we are going to do instead of this shooting gallery screen. So we can duplicate this text right here, which is the score text. And then we're just going to swap the text to say time. And now to make sure that we are showing the countdown time variable's value instead of this string, we're going to format it. So instead of saying score, we're going to say 2 curly brackets. And then the format is going to be 2 colons, a dot, and then 0f, like so. So that means that the countdown time variable's value is going to show as a whole integer number rather than a float. And then we're going to say dot format, and then we're going to pass the countdown time variable as the parameter. So we're going to say countdown time, like so. And then we're going to position this text. So we're going to swap this 55 to say 210 instead. Now before we go ahead and launch the game to see how this looks like, I'm just going to correct a small spelling mistake I've done up here in the prepare shooting gallery function. So I'm going to spell this right, so it says prepare, like so. So I must apologize, but I just realized that I've forgotten to add the button images for the final score screen to the asset files of this tutorial, but I've just gone ahead and now added them to the asset files. So if you just want to pause the video now and then go down to the description box below of this video and open up the Dropbox link, you're going to find the new button files available that you can download and add into your images folder. Now we also want to go back down into the shooting gallery screen. And in here, we're going to make sure that as soon as the shooting gallery screen is shown, that we are running the prepare shooting gallery function to make sure that all of the relevant variables are reset to their initial values. And that is just to make sure that if the user has quit the minigame and then choose to return to it again, that everything is going to be reset back to its initial values. So we're going to create a new line up here, and then we're going to say on show action, and the action we're going to run is a function call to the prepare shooting gallery function. So we're going to say function prepare shooting gallery, like so. So now we can go ahead and save our changes and launch the game to see what this looks like. So now let's go back into the minigame, and then let's see how many points we can get. And as we can tell, once the time was up, we got a message on the screen that stated that. And then we got the final score screen to show up that shows our score, as well as 2 buttons to play again or to quit. So let's try and play again. And as we can see, that does seem to work as it's restarted from the beginning. And we can shoot a bunch of targets again. And our time is up again. And as we can see, we get back to the final score screen. So now we know that that works. So let's go ahead and try to quit. And we can see that we went back to the first scene, which is exactly what we wanted. And then let's go back into the game again. And as we can see, it starts from the beginning again, as the time started at 20 seconds, and we have a score of 0. So now that we know that that works, we're going to go back into the code and implement a few more things before we are completely done with this series. So the last thing we are going to implement for this tutorial is going to be a custom mouse cursor. And this cursor is going to depict a target pointer and only show when we are inside of the shooting gallery screen. And in any other case, we are just going to use this standard mouse cursor that comes with the player's operating system. And to do that, we are going to use a configuration variable called config mouse, and we're going to do that above this start label. So we're going to create a few empty lines above here, and then we're going to say define config.mouse, and this variable should contain a dictionary, so we're going to initiate an empty dictionary at first, like so, and then we're going to create a new item for this dictionary. So for that, we're going to say define config.mouse, and for the item that we are going to create, we can either use a default key such as game menu, say, or image map. So if you use any of these default keys and pair that with the custom cursor image, then that image is only going to be used in the scenarios that the key describes. So if you use the key named say, for example, then the custom cursor image is only going to be shown whenever a say screen is showing. Or if you use the game menu key, then the image is only going to be used inside of the game menu. In our case, we're going to use a custom key to reflect our custom shooting gallery screen. So for that, we're going to say 2 square brackets, like so. And then instead of this, we're going to say target game, like so. And now we have to pair this key with a value. So we're going to say is equal to, and the value needs to be a list containing tuple values. So we're going to add 2 square brackets and then 2 round brackets inside of that, like so. And the first value is going to be the image that we want to use as a cursor. So we're going to say images and then target pointer .png. And the other 2 values that goes inside of this tuple is going to be offset values on the x and y axis, which you could either set to zeros or a value that you want. And in this case, we're going to offset it by 17 and 10, like so. So that means that we're going to offset it by 17 pixels on the x-axis and 10 pixels on the y-axis. And I'm going to leave a link into the description box below where you can read more about how to use this configuration variable. So now to make sure that this custom image is going to be used as the cursor image inside of the shooting gallery screen, we are first of all going to have to scroll up into the shooting gallery screen right here. And in here, we're going to make sure that as soon as this screen is showing, we are going to run another action up here. And this action is going to make sure that the custom cursor that we defined earlier is going to be used inside of this screen. And to do that, we first of all need to make sure that we are creating a list containing all of the actions. So I'm going to wrap all of this into a list, like so. And then I'm going to add the new action after this. So I'm going to add a comma. And the action we're going to run is going to be set variable. So we're going to say set variable. And the variable we want to set is called default mouse and is a default variable already available in Ren'Py. So we're going to add 2 quotation marks and then say default mouse, and then we're going to add a comma after that and say the value that we want to set this default mouse variable to have, and that is going to be target game, like so. But now in order for this to work correctly, we also need to make sure that we are resetting the default mouse variable back to none whenever we want to switch back to the default mouse cursor. And a few places where we can do that is, for example, down in our final score screen, right here. So after the user has clicked on the quit button, then we're going to make sure that we are resetting the default mouse back to its original cursor. So after we have shown the screen right here, which is the scene 1, we are going to make sure that we are resetting the mouse back to its default cursor. So for that, we're going to say comma and then set variable and then default mouse, and then the value is going to be none, like so. And that is going to make sure that the mouse is going to show the default cursor. Now we also want to make sure that if the user decides to open up the game menu from the shooting gallery screen, then we also need to reset the default mouse back to none. And to do that, we're going to open up the screens file right here. And then we're going to search for the game menu screen. So I'm going to press Ctrl F on the keyboard to open up this search. And then I'm going to search for game menu and then press enter. So here we have the game menu screen. And in here, we're going to create a control statement, just as we have done instead of the shooting gallery screen, by creating the on statement. So we're going to say on and then show. So as soon as this screen has been shown, then we're going to run the action that is going to set the default mouse variable back to none. So we're going to say action and then set variable default mouse and then none, like so. But now we also need a way to be able to turn the cursor back into the target pointer whenever the user is returning back into the main game from the game menu. But we only want to do this as long as the user is returning back to the shooting gallery screen and not any other screen. And to do that, we're going to create a new variable inside of the main script. And this variable, we're going to set to true or false depending on if the shooting gallery screen was the last screen to be shown before the game menu. And then we're going to check this variable inside of this game menu screen to see if it is set to true. And if it is, then when we are returning back to the game from this game menu, then the cursor is going to show the target pointer again. So let's go ahead and save our changes inside of this screens file. And then we'll go back into the scripts file. And then here we're going to create this new variable. So we're going to scroll back down into the start label and create this new variable in the other variables section right here. So we're going to create a new line, and then we're going to say shooting gallery is equal to false. So when the game starts, the shooting gallery variable should be set to false, and then once the shooting gallery screen has been shown, then we're going to set it to true. So we're going to scroll back up into the shooting gallery screen right here, and we're going to create another action for our on statement right here. So we're going to create a comma, and then we're going to say set variable shooting gallery and true, like so. And then once we have quit the shooting gallery minigame from the final score screen, so down here, we want to make sure that we are setting this variable back to false as we are now exiting the shooting gallery screen. So we're going to add another action to this image button, that is the quit button. So I'm going to add a comma after this last action right here, and then say set variable, and then we're going to say shooting gallery and then false, like so. And now we're going to go back into the screens file, and instead of our game menu we're going to scroll down to the very last piece of code, so right here, and here we have an if statement that is checking if this game menu happens to be on the main menu, and if it is, then if the user presses a key on the keyboard that represents a game menu key, then this action should run right here. And what we want to do here is to create an else statement, and this else statement is going to run as long as this is not in the main menu. So if this menu is in the game menu, for example, then this else statement is going to run. So let's go ahead and create a new line, and then go inwards once in the indentations, like so. And then we're going to say else, and then we're going to create another key displayable that is also going to run an action whenever the user is pressing a game menu key. So we're going to say key game menu action, and we're going to run several actions. So we're going to add a list, like so. And then instead of this list, we're going to add an if function. So we're going to say if, and the condition we're going to check for is if the shooting gallery variable is set to true. So we're going to say shooting gallery is equal to true. And if this is true, we're going to say comma, and then true is equal to set variable, and then default mouse should be target game, like so. And then we're going to say after that false is equal to null action, like so. So only if the shooting gallery variable is set to true are we going to set the default mouse variable to have the value of target game. And I'm just going to correct this spelling mistake I've done here so that it says default with an L and not a K. And then we're going to add another action to this key displayable. So we're going to add a comma after this last round bracket right here. And then we're going to say return and then true, like so. So this is going to make sure that we first of all are setting the default mouse variable to the value of target game, and then we are returning to the main game. But now we also want to make sure that this is working correctly if the user chooses to click with the mouse on the return button instead of the game menu. So for that we are going to do the same thing. So we can copy paste this list with actions down here and then paste it here, like so. So now let's go ahead and make sure that we are saving the changes inside of this screens file as well as our script file, and then launch the game to see what this looks like. So now let's go back into the minigame, and as we can tell, the cursor has switched from the default cursor to the target pointer instead. So that is working correctly. Now let's try to go into the game menu by hitting the escape key on the keyboard. And as we can tell, the cursor has gone back to the default cursor. And then let's go back into the game again by pressing this return button or by pressing escape on the keyboard. And we can tell that the cursor is back to the target pointer. And let's see what happens if we hit the quit button instead of this final score screen. As we can tell, we go back into the first scene and the cursor is back to the default cursor. Now there's also another scenario inside of the game where you may want to return the cursor back to its original state, and that is when you are inside of the shooting gallery and you press on the X button for the window to close it, and the confirmation screen shows up. And to make sure that the cursor returns back to its original state while the confirmation screen is showing, you want to go back into the screens file and look for the confirm screen, and then you want to create two new on statements that is going to make sure that the cursor shows the original image and then returns back to the target pointer once you go back into the minigame. But other than that, we have now completely finished this tutorial series. So a big congratulations to all of you who have made it this far through the series, and I hope that you found it useful and educational. And if you have found it useful, or you have any other feedback you want to give me, feel free to leave a comment below. So I thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next series.